The studio lights warmed the stage as laughter rippled through the audience, but beneath the polished smiles something sharp hummed in the air. Mila Kunis sat across from Jimmy Fallon, relaxed at first, trading quick jokes and anecdotes that landed cleanly. Her posture was casual, one leg crossed, hands moving as she talked, eyes bright with the familiar rhythm of late-night banter. She teased Jimmy about his endless energy, he ribbed her about disappearing into projects and resurfacing with blockbuster surprises. The band punctuated the moment with a playful riff, and the audience leaned in, comfortable, entertained, certain they were watching another Smooth Tonight Show segment glide toward a cheerful commercial break. Then the tone shifted, subtly at first, like a note played slightly off-key. Jimmy glanced at his cue cards, lifted an eyebrow, and smiled wider than before. "You know," he said, tapping the desk, "people have been talking about this thing you supposedly said behind the scenes on your last project." The words were wrapped in humor, but the phrasing carried weight. Mila laughed lightly, a practiced laugh, and tilted her head. "People talk about a lot of things," she replied, her voice breezy, dismissive in the way seasoned guests often are when rumors float in the air. The audience chuckled. Jimmy nodded, sensing momentum. Sure, but when people talk this much, it gets interesting, right?" He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, eyes sparkling. The band gave a soft, teasing drumroll. Mila's smile held, but it didn't reach her eyes this time. She shifted in her chair, adjusting her jacket, a small movement that cameras caught but viewers at home might miss. "I think what's interesting," she said, carefully, "is how stories grow legs when they're repeated enough." The crowd murmured approval, sensing wit. Jimmy laughed, raising his hands as if surrendering. Okay, fair. But come on, you can't blame us for being curious." Curiosity. The word lingered. Mila's gaze flicked briefly to the audience, then back to Jimmy. "Curiosity is great," she said. "Assumptions, not so much." Her tone was still light, but a firmness had crept in, an invisible line drawn just beneath the jokes. Jimmy, trying to keep the energy buoyant, shrugged. "Hey, we're just having fun here." He glanced at the bandleader, who offered a supportive grin. The audience laughed again, but it was softer now, uncertain. Mila laughed too, though it sounded thinner, like glass tapped instead of bells rung. "And fun," she replied, "usually means everyone's laughing." She paused, letting the word sit. The cameras cut briefly to Jimmy, who nodded quickly, sensing the need to pivot. "Absolutely, totally. Speaking of fun," but the moment had slipped. The cue card shuffle felt louder than it should have been. Jimmy hesitated, then glanced back down. "Actually, before we move on, I just want to clear this up," he said, still smiling, but his voice had changed. "Did you or did you not tell someone on set that you were done playing nice for the industry?" The audience gasped lightly, a ripple of surprise passing through the rows. Mila blinked once. Her smile disappeared completely this time. She sat back, shoulders squared, eyes locked on Jimmy. The band went silent, instruments frozen mid-readiness. A producer offstage stiffened, watching the exchange through a monitor. "That's a very specific question," Mila said, her voice calm, controlled. "And it's based on something that isn't true." The room felt smaller, as if the walls had edged closer. Jimmy chuckled nervously. "Hey, if it's not true, then no harm in saying so, right?" Mila leaned forward now, mirroring his earlier posture. "There's harm," she said, "when a narrative is framed to make someone sound ungrateful or difficult." The audience was quiet, eyes darting between them. "Especially," she continued, "when women are involved." A low murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. Jimmy nodded quickly, trying to regain footing. Of course. I didn't mean." "I know what you meant," Mila interrupted, not raising her voice, not smiling. "And I know how these things land once they leave this room." She gestured subtly toward the cameras. "This isn't just us talking anymore." The silence stretched. Jimmy cleared his throat. "All right, let's reset," he said, forcing a laugh. "No bad vibes. We love you here." Mila exhaled slowly, a breath meant to steady herself. "I appreciate that," she said. "But respect isn't just about being invited. It's about how conversations are handled." The bandleader glanced at Jimmy, unsure whether to jump in with music or stay still. The audience shifted in their seats, tension replacing comfort. Jimmy attempted another smile, softer this time. "Point taken." He reached for a new card, fingers fumbling slightly. "So, your new film." But Mila wasn't done. "This happens a lot," she said, gently but firmly, eyes still on Jimmy. People think because it's late night, because it's funny, boundaries don't apply. A few audience members clapped instinctively, then stopped when the sound felt too loud in the quiet. Jimmy's grin faded. "I hear you," he said, though the words sounded rehearsed. "We never want anyone to feel uncomfortable here." Mila nodded once. "Then let's be clear about what we're laughing at." She straightened, hands resting calmly in her lap. The cameras caught the resolve in her expression, the shift from guest to person defending her space. Offstage, a producer whispered urgently into a headset. The director hesitated, uncertain whether to cut to commercial or let the moment play out. Jimmy glanced briefly toward the control room, then back at Mila. The familiar rhythm of the show was gone, replaced by something raw and unpredictable. The audience held its breath, aware they were witnessing a turning point rather than a punchline. The laughter that had once filled the room felt distant now, like an echo from earlier in the night, before a simple question had cracked open a much larger conversation. Jimmy shifted in his chair, the practiced ease he carried every night slipping just enough for the cameras to catch it. "All right," he said slowly, palms open on the desk, "let's take a breath." The band leader glanced between them, waiting for a signal that never came. The audience stayed quiet, sensing that clapping or laughing now would feel wrong, like interrupting a private conversation unfolding in public. Mila watched Jimmy closely, her expression calm but unyielding. "I'm not here to fight," she said. "I came to talk about my work, to have fun. But I won't play along when the joke is at my expense." Her voice was steady, carrying across the studio without strain. Every word landed clean, leaving no space for misinterpretation. Jimmy nodded again, quicker this time. "Understood," he said. "We can move on." He reached for the next card, but his hand hesitated, hovering. The hesitation spoke louder than any apology. Mila noticed it, the flicker of uncertainty, and shook her head gently. "That's the thing," she continued. "Moving on without acknowledging what just happened doesn't fix it." A murmur rippled through the audience. Somewhere off stage, a producer's voice hissed through a headset, urging a cut. The red light on the camera stayed on. Jimmy swallowed. "What would you like me to say?" he asked, half joking, half sincere. The joke didn't land. The silence answered for him. Mila leaned back, folding her hands together. "I'd like you to understand that words matter," she said, "especially when millions of people are watching." She glanced briefly toward the camera, not breaking the fourth wall but acknowledging its presence. "People take this stuff home with them." Jimmy sighed, the sound picked up clearly by his mic. "You're right," he said at last. "And I'm sorry if that came across the wrong way." The apology was careful, measured. The audience waited, unsure whether to applaud. Mila studied him, reading between the lines. "It's not about if," she replied. It did. Her tone wasn't angry, just factual. That seemed to unsettle Jimmy more than yelling would have. He nodded again, slower now. "Okay," he said quietly. "That's on me." For a moment, it seemed like the storm might pass there, resolved enough to limp toward a commercial break. Then a voice from offstage cut through the tension. "Jimmy, wrap it up," a producer whispered loudly enough for the front rows to hear. The whisper carried urgency, bordering on panic. Mila's eyes flicked toward the sound. "See," she said softly, "this rush to move past discomfort is exactly what I'm talking about." The audience stirred, some nodding, some shifting uneasily. Jimmy's jaw tightened. "We're live," he said under his breath, then louder, "and we've got a schedule." He tried to smile again, but it didn't reach his eyes this time. Mila stood. The movement was sudden enough to draw a collective gasp. Chairs creaked. Cameras scrambled to adjust framing. Jimmy half rose from his seat, instinctively mirroring her. Hey, he said, palms up. "You don't have to go." Mila straightened fully, smoothing her jacket. "I do," she said simply. Because staying would mean pretending this was just entertainment. She looked at the audience, then back at Jimmy. And it wasn't. The bandleader shifted, fingers hovering over keys, unsure whether to play her off or stay silent. The director hesitated, then cut to a wide shot, capturing both of them standing under the bright lights. Jimmy forced a laugh, the reflex of years on television kicking in. "All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break." "I'm not storming off," Mila interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "I'm choosing to leave." The distinction mattered. The audience responded with scattered applause, tentative at first, then growing stronger. It wasn't loud, but it was real. Jimmy froze, the applause catching him off guard. "Okay," he said, voice tight. We respect your choice. He gestured vaguely toward the wings. Thank you for coming. Mila nodded. Thank you for listening, she replied, though her tone suggested the listening had come late. She turned toward the exit, heels clicking softly against the stage floor. As she reached the edge, she paused, glancing back one last time. I hope next time, she said, the joke isn't more important than the person. Then she was gone, swallowed by the curtain. The studio buzzed with confused energy. The applause faded into murmurs. Jimmy stood alone at his desk, hands resting on the polished wood as if anchoring himself. He stared after Mila for a beat too long before turning back to the camera. Well, he said, forcing brightness into his voice, that was unexpected. A nervous laugh bubbled from the audience. The band struck up a half-hearted riff, unsure of the tone. Jimmy shuffled his cards, then set them down. We're going to take a break, he said again, more firmly this time. The camera light blinked off as the show cut to commercial. Backstage, the air was thick with tension. Crew members whispered in clusters. Producers argued in low voices. Mila walked briskly down the hallway, her expression unreadable. An assistant jogged to keep up, asking if she was okay. Mila nodded once. I'm fine, she said. I just meant what I said. Within minutes, clips of the exchange began circulating online. Viewers replayed the moment her smile faded, the pause before she stood, the applause that followed. Comment sections filled with debate, praise, criticism, and questions about where the line should be drawn. When the show returned from commercial, Jimmy addressed it briefly, choosing his words carefully. Earlier tonight, things got a little intense, he said. And that's on me. We're here to make people laugh, not uncomfortable. It was the closest thing to a full acknowledgement he could manage on air. Mila, meanwhile, left the building quietly, slipping into the back of a waiting car. As it pulled away, she glanced out at the city lights, her reflection faint in the window. She exhaled, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over her. She hadn't planned to make a statement that night. She'd just refused to stay silent. By morning, headlines would shout that she'd been kicked off, that she'd clashed, that the moment had shocked late-night television. The truth, as always, would be quieter and harder to summarize. But for those who watched closely, the image would linger, a guest standing up under the lights, choosing herself over the smooth comfort of laughter, and leaving a room full of people to sit with the silence she left behind.